This is Moments of Truth with Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker, and today I am blessed to be joined by Dave Blake, founder and CEO of ClientSuccess. I consider Dave both a colleague and a friend. Dave, welcome. Thanks for making some time for me today. Tell us about what's going on with you these days.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it. Always excited to be with you. We're doing a lot, you know, we're, as everybody knows, it's a tail end, or I don't even know what end of COVID we're in.
So true.
But we're hunkering down as a family, but we're also as a business just plowing through and doing our best to navigate these waters and just continue to do great things for the industry and our customers.
That's great. You bring up COVID, which we're all living with now, and I think that's an interesting topic for our discussions, right? So let's talk about how customer success has become the new critical success factor in the time of COVID, right? It's amazing to me that it took a global pandemic to get us here.
Yeah, and I don't think we're still there all the way. You know, from our perspective, what we've seen is during this time when sales pipelines shrunk and dried up, most CEOs doubled down on customer success. They finally got it. Those who didn't get it, most of them finally got it because they said, hey, during this time, I don't have a strong sales pipeline. I need to double down on my current customers. And so we were really happy to see that most CEOs either already knew and quickly went to double down or were converted by way of pandemic to really double down on customer success, but we're not quite there. I think there's still some that still don't get it.
Now you guys did a survey. There's a measurable percentage though of like a double-digit percentage of CEOs that still don't get it.
Yeah, we went out, we surveyed 300 to 400 customer success professionals, and we asked them the question, does your CEO really get customer success? Do they support it? Do they invest in it? Do they make it a key part of their board meeting? And surprisingly, there was almost 30% of the respondents came back and said, our CEO doesn't still quite get it, which is really, it blows my mind today in this day and age in SaaS, but it's the reality is that there's many that are either very sales focused or very product focused, and customer success is somewhat of an afterthought. Which is unfortunate.
And that's mind blowing to me. And I mean, regardless of COVID, it's about, getting them in the door is important, but it's even more important to keep them as long as possible, especially when the customer spend, you're only getting 5 to 15% up front, right? You're never going to cover the customer acquisition costs or even come up with a viable, financially healthy business unless your CLTV to CAC is like 3x or higher.
Yeah, I think I had a really interesting conversation with a very distinguished, I'd say very distinguished businessman who also founded a major investment firm, more of a growth equity firm. I had a conversation with him the other day, and he gave two interesting comments as we were talking about this same topic. He said, you know what, CEOs need to remember that the best way to make money is to stop losing it. And I love that.
That is a great
best way to make money is to stop losing it. So reduce churn and have an importance in there, invest in there, especially for those companies who have a churn problem. But then he said when we invest in a company, there's 5 key metrics that we look at. And he said, if you think about it, out of these 5, customer success really influences the majority of them. So he said, look at growth rate. That's number 1. And so customer success by increasing upsell or reducing churn can impact growth rate. Reducing churn. High gross margins, maybe not as much. Retention is a third. Direct impact. Upsell is an expansion is a fourth. And the 5th was LTV, lifetime value of a customer. And so his point was like, man, CEOs who don't get that when you're going to raise, those are the key metrics. And he was just saying what an awesome space we're in the customer success space, in that we have major impact and influence on the 5 key metrics of a business.
4 out of those 5 key metrics, 80% of the metrics
Yep.
that
Yep.
drive the business are
Yeah.
directly tied to customer success and about creating an environment,
Yep.
creating a situation, right? I want to create, the team is responsible for creating the situation for that upsell, for that cross sell, for that renewal, to drive that expansion, to increase net revenue retention. It's amazing to me, which is why even the 30% number that you cite is so shocking to me,
Yeah.
especially these days. So that begs the question, what are these CEOs thinking? But also, if these are venture-backed companies, where are the VCs? Where is
Yeah.
the advice and the mentoring that you would expect the investors to be doing, in and around customer success?
Yeah, I think there might be some more research to be done on like the profile of these customers, but I can imagine that most of these CEOs, they may be in a growth spurt, they may be in hyper growth mode, and the growth is masking or deflecting from the idea of focusing on customer success. Hey, we're doing fine, we're growing. And most of the time, sometime along that journey, the CEOs, it will catch up with them, and he or she will eventually have a leaky bucket or churn problem, or even more so, realize the missed opportunity of driving expansion through customer success, the value of growing your existing customers through a strong customer success organization. Eventually, they'll catch on, but there's still work to do.
Well, and if you're familiar with David Dempsey and Dr. Doom and his,
Yeah.
that's what he raised, in that now infamous meeting at Salesforce, where they were all excited and having that, that offsite and top of the world, and the company's doing great, and he's like, wait a minute, we've got a huge leaky bucket, and we really need to address this.
Yep, and I think it's again, the key for these CEOs is look at it as a risk mitigation, but also an opportunity to go and grow the existing customer base, and how much easier it is to grow existing customer base if you're focused on it, investing in the right way, and you've rallied the entire organization to get it, is just like you do.
Now, how much of this do you think is kind of more old school leaders, old school leadership, or even more junior leaders of these companies that are getting advice from older school leadership that are thinking
Yeah.
about sales and growth and customer success from the lens of the more traditional enterprise software? I mean, both you and I come from the on-prem enterprise space, so I know you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I think there's definitely some of that. I think that you do have some of this old school mentality within these some of these venture firms, that they're focused at growth of all cost, growth. They say revenue cures all ills, or whatever you mean.
Yes.
And usually they speak about it from a sales perspective, and they miss out on that opportunity. So I think it's a little bit, and then I think it is on some founders, some just inexperience, and saying, there's so much pressure on the VC world, especially as early stage companies, to show that growth. And so it's like, okay, we're going to just add sales reps. And then they find that like adding the sales rep doesn't get you the growth that you need, especially if there's any kind of churn problem. And so it's definitely something where they need to kind of switch gears and go back, focus on churn. But when you reduce churn and you've got the growth, that's where you see the exponential growth. That's the magic. And sometimes people find that early, sometimes they find it a little bit later, and sometimes it's too late.
Yeah, and it's finding the right balance. It's not one or the other, but it's finding a balance. You can't not invest in success. You just can't these days. And there are things that you will do. It also depends on the maturity of the company, right? There are things there are unnatural things that you will do in the earlier stages. But that type of thing, the growth at all costs, means that your customer success team needs to be in place even more so, right? You need to be prepared to deal with that.
Yep. I think the most, and I'd say the more sophisticated CEOs are taking it beyond just the core customer success team, and they're saying, okay, how do we rally, how do we align comp plans, accountability, metrics beyond the customer success team to kind of spread the wealth of this across the organization and really get everybody behind it. I listened to a podcast on my morning runs. I love to listen to podcasts. And I listened to one this morning, and they said that this CEO said they require every team member to spend, I think 5% of their time on the phone with customers. So they get it, so they understand, they have the empathy.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a perfect example of a CEO that gets it. And I love that suggestion.
I think it's a great suggestion. Back in the day when I started one of the early customer success teams outside of Salesforce, where I was fortunate actually to have Dean Robeson, who was one of the architects of Customers for Life, was one of my advisors at that time.
Love Dean. Big fan of Dean.
Yeah, great guy. We actually implemented that. This was at Intact, who is now Sage Intact, but we implemented a part of everybody's compensation plan from the CEO all the way down to the office manager, had a variable component that was tied to NPS. And once again, very early, and I implemented very rudimentary customer success team. Is nothing like the complexities we have now in customer success, but just that notion of, hey, we all need to be focused on driving the success of our customer. But you touched on something that I think I hear a lot, and I've heard a lot, not just over the last few months, over the last few years, and that's about compensation. Right. Yeah. I think that the compensation has been slow to evolve on the sales side of things, on the customer success side of things. But in that vein, I would love to get your perspective on, should CS own a quota? Should they have a number? I mean, and I have my opinion. We'll see if I don't remember the last time you and I talked about this, but I would love to get your take on this.
So I'm one of those in the camp that I say yes.
I'm with you, man.
With the caveat that there's some situations where it depends, and there's some strategies where I understand that they shouldn't. I just think that right now, even in the COVID, what you saw a lot was there were some teams, complete teams, when the COVID crisis started, that were completely decimated. They were let off. Yeah. CEOs got rid of their entire teams. And I think one of the common threads were that they were all about customer happiness, but they didn't own a number. It was hard to prove out their value within the organization. And so the way I look at it, let me just explain. One is, I just think that there's this long-standing debate about whether CSMs lose their trusted advisor status if they own a quota. And I just believe that there's no better definition of solution selling than a customer success manager taking care of their customers, focusing on value, and being able to have those conversations with their customer, because they know everything about them. They know the key objectives. And so they can, with credibility and with trust, as a trusted advisor, say, hey, have you thought about this product? Or, hey, your renewal's coming up. Let me work through it. So I disagree with the common just thought out there that owning a number ruins your trusted advisor status. I think customers most of the time would rather have those discussions with their CSMs. And I think if the CSMs approach it right, they can have that right balance.
Well, that's the rub right there, right?
Yeah.
Owning a number doesn't mean you have to follow a sales type of approach to achieve the number, right?
Exactly.
And you need to think about it not in a quarterly cadence either, right?
Yep.
This isn't about you hitting your own quota number. This is about us driving value for the customer, helping them achieve their desired outcomes, right? So I agree with you. I think they need to own a number, and they need to own a number which is, hey, I need to do whatever I can to ensure that my book of business maintains, it's at a certain level, and then
Yep.
maybe there's an expansion at a certain level, right? That I think that is, I think that is it does not create a situation where you ruin that trusted advisor relationship. Where it does is in the compensation plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Right? Because the focus is not on moving. If the compensation plan is like a heavily leveraged 50-50, then it's going to be, okay, I got to wrap a process around this so I can move my customer through this process. Not, oh, it's more like 80-20, and it's really focused on making sure the customer's getting value and achieving their outcomes.
I agree. I think there's two key things that I think that a lot of customer success leaders miss in trying to make this transition and try to have that right balance. One is a compensation plan, and designing that is really important. And I got to tell you, I think I've tried every compensation plan over the, I don't know, 2 decades I've been customer success, from MBOs to no variable to various levels of variable. And it's hard to find the right balance. And what I've found is, some of the recent things, experimentation we've done, is one was based off a book, actually right over here, that's called the four pillars of four disciplines of
Four disciplines of execution, 4DX. Yeah, we're huge fans of
Exactly.
4DX. Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
And what it says is, have your goal, your wildly important goal.
Yep.
Identify the activities that you measure on a daily basis that help you achieve those goals.
Yep.
Make it a scoreboard, not a scorecard, and then hold accountability. I love that of designing a comp plan around that, to say it's not just the retention and growth that we're going to comp you on. Let's think about the activities that we'll measure every day that will result in that.
Yes.
And do that. We've experimented with that. We're getting closer under that model to the right model, which means I'm not just focusing on the other reason I like it is that it focuses on some of the activities here and now versus waiting to the end of a quarter or a year to get my payout, my income, and my results. So that's one, is designing the right comp plan, and that's really important. And I think there's still a lot of experimentation out there to find the right one. Second one is, I think that a lot of leaders say this: hey, I'm going to give you a quota. We need to own a quota that will give us respect, that will show us who, add the more value here. It's okay, we can own it. But there's no coaching. Like, most of these CSMs don't know how to own a quota. They don't know how, even, there's some concepts around negotiation and tactics and stuff like that. And when I mean coaching on owning a quota, it's not that we're going to make them all saleswomen and salesmen. It's mainly saying, I'm going to coach you just like I'm coaching you on customer success best practices and principles. We're going to also do it on how to have a negotiation discussion, how to engage with stakeholders. What do you do? All these things that I think that it is missing today, that leaders will say own a quota, but they don't arm and train and coach their team to do it. And then they could fail, and then it comes back and says we shouldn't have done that. CS leaders need to step up and provide the coaching, or bring in their sales counterparts to do some of this coaching, so that their team is prepared with the fundamentals and basics that they need to have that conversation.
Or pick up the phone and call Success Coaching, because we actually just released negotiation fundamentals and how to have the consultative and all of that stuff, storytelling, all of that outcome-based selling, all that stuff in our level 4. So I love that. I love hearing that.
I would say you can't talk about coaching in customer success space without talking about Success Hacker, and I mean that honestly.
Thank you. That was not a paid placement for anybody who's listening.
It wasn't. Best coaching fundamentals out there.
Thank you.
And that's what I'm saying, is whether you have somebody there, whether you have Success Hacker and others, it's really important to arm them with the skills,
Yeah,
just like you're arming them with other skills that
exactly.
they need on a day in and day out basis.
Exactly. But I want to go back to 4DX for a second. I love that you mentioned 4DX because we're huge fans of 4DX,
Yeah.
right? And because 4DX is a framework for figuring out how do I ensure that the right people are doing the right things in the right ways at the right times. How do I measure and monitor them, right? That with the scoreboard, those key key actions, those things that need to be done in order to move us closer to the WIG. We've actually extracted that concept, and we've built that out as part of our success plan execution course.
Yep.
And we borrow direct, and we cite it, we borrow directly from it. But key actions, if you think about it, and you can use this once again with the, I didn't even think about it from the compensation perspective, but we refer to key actions as leading indicators. Right. So if these three key actions are imperative for me to achieving the WIG, and 4DX talks about it, then if I could tie my compensation to hitting these three key actions in order to achieve the WIG. So I love that, thinking outside the box, because I think of 4DX as, okay, this is about executing, a plan. Right. And whether it's a success plan, whether it's a project you're doing for work, whether it's a project you're doing for home. But I love that, extending that to the concept of compensation. Never thought about that.
Yeah, we've experimented with our customer success team. We've created a dashboard that is all about those leading indicators. I'd say we're still refining that. We've seen some great results in kind of our first approach. We've seen some areas that we'd like to improve, but overall, I like the concept of doing the leading indicators, but also keeping in mind that the ultimate WIG is retention and growth, and how do you combine those to drive drive behavior and drive results across the team, and reward the customer success team for those results.
Right, and that's a great point. Driving behavior, right, and you need to be doing that from the start. It's so much harder to change it, and reset expectations later on, right? Which is why you got to lay this all out and put something in place that gets the behavior going off in the right direction.
Yep, exactly. That's the goal, and I think there's something there, and we'll see how it turns out over the next 6 months.
I'll be definitely interested in hearing more about that and how that goes.
Sounds good.
Dave, thank you as always. It's like I said, it's a pleasure to spend time with you, to talk to you. I'm sorry that I was really bummed that we're not going to be able to see you here next month in Sundance. You guys put on a fantastic event every year. The CS 100 is one of our favorite events to be part of, to sponsor. It's an amazing experience. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to see you next year, whenever you guys whenever you schedule it. But until then, it's great seeing you. It's great talking to you, and of course, I wish you the best, and stay healthy and stay safe.
Thanks, Andrew. Big fans of Success Hacker and the team, and always happy to help anybody in the customer success community. Just reach out to me at ClientSuccess and Dave at ClientSuccess.com. Always happy to help.
Thanks, Dave.